Okay, so it's part 3 of lesson 8. We're going to carry on with our shopping cart. So we've written our view. We've got an add to cart button. We have our cart table in the database. We have our shopping cart controller where we've written the code so that we can actually add something to the cart. But now we need the bridge in the middle. We need our shopping cart controller. So we're going to make a new controller, but we're not going to use scaffolding. It's going to be an empty controller. And we're just going to put a few methods in there. We basically want an index method to show the cart, and we're going to start with an add to cart method. So right-click your controllers folder, and then choose Add Controller. We want this to be empty. We're not using scaffolding. We're going to write all the methods that are in here. There won't be that many of them. So choose MVC5 Empty Controller. And we want to call this shopping cart. So we're not getting any views attached. We're only going to build one view for this later. We'll build an index view. So we do have, by default, whenever you create an empty controller, it still gives us an index view. So we'll come back to this one in a bit.
So what kind of controller are we picking?
Empty.
Empty.
Right, so it's going to be a GET request. We're going to write a public action result called add to cart. In that method, again, we need to know what album they clicked on, because that gets passed in as part of the URL. The first thing we want to know is there already an existing shopping cart here? Right? So we're going to call our get method. Now we need our shopping cart controller. If we look at some of our other controllers, we made a reference. Actually, it automatically uses our model. Our shopping cart controller doesn't have a reference to our models. We're going to need that. We're going to use our models. Otherwise, this controller has no way to access that shopping cart model we just created. So this is where we want to call the get cart method we just created. And we're going to pass in we need to pass the HTTP context because that's what contains information about our user. If we don't pass anything in, our cart has no idea who the user is. So now we can call the add to cart method where we just pass in the ID. So this add to cart calls this add to cart, which will save that to the database. Now we don't normally with our controllers, we've usually used the call return view. So now display a view. We don't have an add to cart view we need to display. We want to display the index view, which will be used to display the current cart. So we are going to redirect to index, which will display current cart. Instead of saying return view, we're going to call this method called a redirect to action. Instead of loading a view, call this method up here instead. And that method will then go and fetch the current cart and display it. So what I'm hoping will happen now, once we try this out, we're going to build our solution. We should then be able to go and click Add to Cart, and then look in our database. We should see albums being added to the cart. We're still going to get a 404 error because we haven't built this view yet. We'll do that after. First, we want to make sure Add to Cart works. Once we can put items in the cart, then we can build the index view to show what's in there. So let's build. And then we can try this. So you probably also want to open and connect to your database so we can look inside of the cart table and see if anything gets saved there. So my build was successful, which is good. So for starters, I'm going to try this as an anonymous user. And if it works, we'll then see what happens once I log in. So I'll reload, or I could go through my store, right through my store link. I can go to store, I could pick so now I'm going to try adding to cart and see what happens. Okay, now this result is expected. What is this error telling us? Why did we get it? Right, because we haven't built the view. We're redirecting shopping cart index, but we'll build this file next. But the add to cart happens first, so now the question is, did it actually add anything? Let's go check. So I'll go to my database, and I'm going to run a query, or we could just run the query select star from cart, would be easier. I just went to my table, right-clicked, and if I choose select, it'll write the query for me. Which is nice, saves us a little bit of time. So we can see our add to cart did actually work. It's time-stamped a minute ago with the correct album ID, and it generated this global unique identifier. So now the question is, if I click back and add another album, what is this going to look like? We'll try it. So I'll click back. I'll now add the next album, which is ID 387. So same for kind of view not found error. That's okay. Let's rerun the query. So notice my cart ID was generated based on my session. So long as even though I'm anonymous, as long as I keep that browser window open, that ID is now in my session, so it's going to persist. So I can keep adding albums, and when I check out, it knows that I've put all these items in my cart. I'm going to try this in a different browser now. I have a different cart ID. So if I go to, I'll just grab my URL of my home page. If I go here and shop, I'll put a couple different albums in my cart. Actually, you know what? I'll put the same albums in my cart, but I'm in a different browser. So notice I now have two different, so this is session dependent. It generates that unique identifier per session for an anonymous user. So this means, Ryan, coming back to your point earlier, if we're not logged in, that cart can't persist. right? If I close that browser and come back tomorrow, it doesn't know I'm the same user. It will generate a unique identifier for every session. But now let's see what happens if I actually log in. Sorry, I'm not trying to understand your question.
Actually,
We typically want to allow anonymous people to shop. They just have to identify themselves at checkout, right? If you think about it, probably many sites you wouldn't shop on if you were forced to create an account first. Because I'm thinking, I don't want to give some company my information because I don't know if I'm going to buy or not. I want to shop, put stuff in my cart, see the total. I also want to know how much it's going to cost for shipping. And then and only then, if I'm actually going to buy, do I want to give them my personal information and create an account.
what happens with the data in the database? So,
Well, it persists, it stays here.
yeah.
So even if I don't check out as the owner of the site, I at least know, hey, anonymous people are are interested in these items. They just maybe never purchased them. Okay. So I'll go to a different window now. This time I'm going to log in. I'll log in with my Google account. Did not work at all. Okay, we'll try my Facebook account. I'm not. One. Okay, awesome. All right, I'll just create another account. Okay, so now I'm logged in. My username shows up, and I'll put the same items in my cart. So I add the first and second AC/DC albums. We'll run our query one more time. So because I've logged in, it no longer needs to generate some unique cart ID. It just uses my user ID. Now we can also check for the persistence of it. So I'm logged in Chrome in that private window as customer 1. Now I'm going to go to an entirely different browser, log in with that same account, and add another item, and it should get added here. So in effect, that cart is going to persist. We'll even use Internet Explorer. Why not? So I'll log in here with my new customer account. So now I'll add the third album. So now I've got two different browsers open, but because I've logged in, that cart will follow me around. I can log in on any device now, and that cart will be persistent. But we can only do that when the user's logged in. If they're anonymous, we don't have that ability to persist their cart across sessions because we don't know who they are. Now, the one other issue, there's one other small thing we should probably change. Notice every time we click add to cart now, it adds that item. What should happen? So I just added Lenny Kravitz's greatest hits. Right now, the way we've written add to cart, what happens if I click add to cart again on the same album? What's it going to do?
Again,
It's going to add it again.
but what if somebody wants to buy 2 albums?
Well, let's look at what happens, right? I now have the same user, the same album. So what should happen instead of this? Yeah, what we should do before we add an album to the cart, we should be checking, does this cart ID already have this album? And if it does, rather than add a new record, we should just increment or add 1 to the count. We should do an update instead. So we should probably modify our add to cart method to take this little scenario into consideration. So that's in here, right? Right now, we are adding every single time. We probably should be checking if this album already exists in this cart. So we're going to modify this a little bit. We're going to need an if statement here. So is this album already in this cart? I'm going to take out the var here. We're going to declare the cart item here. So we can use single or default, meaning find one and return null if nothing's found. Oops. So we're looking for the current album ID in the current shopping cart. What do we do here? Hang on. Oh, whoops. Sorry. My mistake. So does this album already exist in the current cart, yes or no? So if cart item is null, we're going to wrap this inside of this if statement. So this is what happens if item is not already in cart. So if it's not there, we're going to add a new one. And we're going to move this inside here. So we only call add if we're creating a new record. Otherwise, just take the existing count and add 1. So we don't insert the same album into the same cart a second time. We just say, however many we've already got of that album, add 1 more. So we're going to check if we already have it. If we don't have it, we insert it. Otherwise, we just add 1 to the quantity. So the save happens regardless. In this case, it will just do an update. In that case, it will insert a new record into the cart table. So we should save and build, and then I'm going to try this again. Where I'm logged in, I'm going to add the same album to my cart that I've already added, and the database, rather than inserting a new record, it should increment from 1 to 2. So we'll try this. I'll try this in my Chrome window here. So I'm still signed in. If I go to my store, so notice still got my email address here. So now I've got album 386 and 387. I'm gonna try adding it again. So notice now my album ID 386, it now says I have bought 2 of them. It didn't insert it again. So we probably needed that check right from the beginning. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible to get it working, and figured we could add that feature now. So we're almost done for today. There's still one thing we don't have, is we have to fix the problem that we're trying to load a view that doesn't exist, and we have to build that view so it will actually show the current contents of the shopping cart. So the user could delete stuff and also see their total. Then next week we'll want to be able to add we'll probably do remove from cart next week, and then we need a button that links to go and check out. So to make, first of all, the error go away, let's make this view. So in views, shopping cart, we want to make an index view. Now, when we created the controller, notice Visual Studio generated a shopping cart folder in views, but it's empty. So if you go down to views and shopping cart, right click and choose add, we want to add a view. We're going to call it index. We'll leave the template, meaning without a model. Let's leave it at that for now. We'll modify that after. Layout page, well, let's choose our usual views, shared, and layout, so it gets the same layout as all our other views. So right now, it just says, let's change the heading from index, which is useless, to a meaningful heading. It should say shopping cart. So if we add one more thing to the cart now, it should, at least the error should go away, and we'll get a view loading that has a heading of shopping cart. Just going to be, there's not going to be any content in there yet. So if I refresh this, my shopping cart index, it should now load at least. So at least we get a page. We should also add a link in our navigation bar, because any site where you can buy stuff, you want to be able to go to your cart from anywhere. Right? Right now, the only way to get to this page is to put something in your cart. We should always have a link in the navigation. You know, you might have a little icon with the number of items. For now, we'll just stick a link up here that says cart. It goes to our shopping cart index, so we can come here anywhere. So let's open up shared layout. And right after our store link, let's add a link that says cart. It calls the shopping cart method, sorry, it calls the index method in our shopping cart controller. Now a user can get to this page from anywhere. It's part of the global nav. They don't have to be logged in. Everybody can see that link at all times. Right, so I just added line 28. So now we've got a cart link, so I can go home. I can get back to my cart at any point now. Now we just need to populate this page. An empty cart page is never useful. When I click cart, I want to see what's in there. Just leave this up again. So all we added was line 28 in blue. So we're going to need to do two things. Actually, I guess three things. One is we're going to need to create a new file called a view model. So the view model we want to use because we need to store different information. We need to show information that comes from some different places on this page. What information do we want to display on the shopping cart page? What are all the things a user will want to see when they click cart? Okay, so the names of the items. What else besides just the names of the items? Yep, the price, the names, the quantity of each one, and what else would you expect to see on that page? One other important piece of information. We would want to remove item. Yep. What would you expect to see at the bottom of your cart? Or maybe both at the top and bottom? Yeah, the total and a checkout button, right? So because we get this stuff kind of from all over, it doesn't come from any one model, we're going to create a view model. So this is kind of like we can take pieces from individual models and pass that object to our view so then we can display it. That will include all the things you just mentioned. Then we're going to, in our shopping cart controller, we need to modify this. So we're not just loading the view, but we're getting the current shopping cart view model and passing that to the page. And then this page is going to need some more HTML. We're going to need a table with a loop so that we can display all the items in the cart. So let's make this in our model. We're going to make one new file. This is the last new file we have to make today. So in models, right click and choose add a class. And we'll call this shopping cart view model. To add that, so this will give us a list of all the items in the cart. We'll come back and we'll deal with the total after. First, we just want to be able to show all the items. So we're going to use this object a pretty simple file to start with. We'll add a bit more to it. So now in our index view, before we return the view, we're going to get the current cart, again, passing in the HTTP context, because we need to know who the user is. And get the right cart for the right user. I'm wondering if we even really need the view model. You know what? Well, maybe see if we can do it without, just to keep it simple. I'm curious how this will work. Let's just try passing the cart back. Pass cart, the index view. We'll try it this way. We might be able to do it without our view model. We'll see. So before we load the view, we want to grab the current cart. Just have to see. This won't include our. Now this will get our cart, but our cart right now, all it has is the ID attached. We need to attach the items to it. I was trying to do this a simple way. We're going to need one more thing. In our shopping cart class, bear with me for a sec. Okay. So we have a method for getting the cart ID. We have a method for adding. We never wrote a method to get the items in the cart. So this is where we need to query the database and get whatever's the user's already put in their cart. First, we get the current cart ID, and then we're going to call get cart items. Yeah, I think we will need our view model, unfortunately. I was trying to simplify it. I don't think we'll be able to. So we're going to add that to our shopping cart model. Leave it up for a minute. We'll deal with the cart total later. Yeah, we'll need this. And we'll pass the view model. So there's sort of our back-end code for getting the current contents of the user's shopping cart. So this view model, this will be the model in our index view. That's what's getting handed to it. An object that has all the albums here. We're going to create the model. So this is the object we're passing to our view. Now we can just create a table. Our column headings are going to be album, price, quantity. Now we should be able to loop through all of the items and display the album title, the price, and the quantity. We're going to loop through our model's cart items. We'll display the album title, current album price, and the count, however many times they put this in their cart. Now we don't have the total yet. We don't have remove yet. That's okay. We can at least see what this looks like. So you do need this declaration on line 1. So the view knows what kind of object is being passed to it. So I'm going to build and try this. I'm still logged in, and there are items in the database related to my username, so it should show me my items. So that's what I've added. We might even want to call them for the artist, maybe. And now we can really test the persistence of the cart, right? So I'm logged in with the same account in 2 different browsers, but I can see my cart because it's coming from the database. It's tied to my username. So now I have a persistent cart. I could close the computer, come back, log in, and my cart's still going to be here. I can close right out of those windows. Cart's still here. So long as the user's logged in as they shop, then we can keep track of what they bought so they can come back here. We should also format this probably as currency. So we can use a string formatting function. If I use this C# currency format, put in dollars and cents if I just refresh my shopping cart index. So now it's refresh. So we don't have the ability to remove yet. We can do that next week. We'll just use a little script and do it with Ajax so we can update the cart without having to refresh the whole page.
So when you, say you go to the store and buy an album as an anonymous user and you log in, it'll still keep the session ID as your first cart? Would it be difficult to like nullify that to log in?
No, that's a good question. Let's try it. Because it's still in the session, so my cart is still here. But if I add something else to the cart now, Yeah, my user ID is still in the session. So long as the browser's open, the session isn't, it hasn't killed my session. So if I add something else, it's still going to add it to the same. I guess we'll try and see. It's an interesting question. Yeah, it's still, because it's still, my session's still active.
I guess I was just wondering, would it be difficult to like nullify that session variable when you log out?
You'd have to close the browser. Basically, you have to close your browser. That's the only way. Yes, I suppose we could. So what, sorry, if we wanted to make sure, we would actually do it here. In the account controller, if we look at the log off method, yes, we could cancel it here. So we could set session card ID. If I did that, now it won't continue to add to that same cart. So I'll just go back. Well, I have to log in and then log back out, right? Because that'll happen on log out. So let me log in and then I'll log out and then I'll try adding something else and we should get a blank cart at that point. Okay. So my cart persists, but now, Josh, if I log off and then go back to the cart page, I should get a different cart. Right? So we've killed that session. So now if I shop, I'm somebody else. Yes, for the same reason, right? Because every time we add to cart, right? Because every time we add to cart, first it calls get cart, and which checks the session. So the session isn't going to be null. If we've already put something in it, it's generated one of these GUIDs, and that's now part of the session. So even if I've logged in, it will continue to use the existing ID in the session. So it's not tied to my account. Nope. As long as that session is active, it'll keep that. Yeah, you won't lose them until you log out. Once you log out, they're lost. That's a good question. Okay. So the one other thing we could add to this was we haven't added the total. So on my cart, go back in. That's interesting. What happens here? The cart should come back. Okay, so I'm back in, my items are here. We should be able to do the total. Now, I mean, we could do it. The easy way is we could do it inside the view. We could just keep a running total in our loop. Would be one possibility. The other possibility is we just write a simple function in here we write a little get total. So we could do that. So in our shopping cart model, we can write a public method that gives us back a decimal called get total. Now our total might be a number, it might be 0, it might be null. So we need to keep in mind if the user clicks on cart and there's nothing there, we're going to get nulls. So we want to set up our total this way with a question mark, meaning the value could be null. And we don't want it to crash if it's null. So in this case, we're going to select all the albums in the current cart. We can actually do this all in one step. This gets all the current albums in the cart. We're going to then do math, multiply, we need to multiply the quantity by the price. And we're going to sum all that stuff together. Figure out what's going on in a minute. So we'll return a total or a 0 if total is null. Whoops, and that's because that should be in db.carts. There. We can do 3 things at once. It's kind of neat with this link query syntax. We could first fetch the albums, then figure out how much the total individual totals are, and then add them up. We can actually do it with one command. So get the albums in the current cart. Calculate total for each. Count times price. Sum all the line totals together. We can do this in a single query. Fetch the albums. For each album, figure out how much the total is, and then add those together in a running total. We're almost done, I promise. So now in our view model, we're going to add this. We'll add a public property called cart total. And then in our controller, we need to call that get total method as well. So the view model returns both the list and the total. In our shopping cart controller, when we create a new view model, we need to run both methods. First get the items and then figure out the total. And store everything in one object. So this is where our view model is handy. We're calling 2 different functions and putting all the results together in one thing and saying to the view, here you go, show all this stuff. So now we can add a total row after our loop. Should be the last thing we need to do to get our total showing. Now we have a cart total property in our view model, so we can display that down at the bottom. So we just added that last row. So now if we click on our cart link, so long as there's something in it, we should get a total being displayed at the bottom. We'll just check it out, see if it worked. So we have no ability to change the quantities or remove, but at least we can add and we can see what's there. We should probably put a blank TD tag at the end so our table doesn't look so wonky. So I'll put one more. Be better. Be sure you build because we've made some changes. So we're getting there. So what we want to do next week, we'll finish our music store. We're going to add remove from cart. We're going to add a checkout button and then add a billing and shipping page. And we'll actually want to move those items. If the user clicks checkout, move those items, take them out of the cart table and generate an order and then insert all of the items from the cart into our order detail table. So we actually can print and display an invoice to the customer. Here's your order number. Here's what you bought. So we should be able to do all of that next week. So please do your little Microsoft lab between now and then and get your assignment 2 set up. I do have office hours the next couple days. Okay, so I'm happy to help anybody who needs help. I'm going to put everything on Git right now for you guys.